name is Stevie Stevenson. I'm from Salisbury, Maryland. This truck is a 1995 Marmon PHR. That stands for high rise. The HR does 125. It has a 12.7 60 series Detroit in it that has been rebuilt and bumped up some. It's not stock horsepower no more, and it has a 6-speed Allison transmission that came in it from the factory. This was the first one built by Marmon with the Allison in it, and it was a prototype truck. The gentleman in Pennsylvania had 12 trucks, and this is one of the 12 he had. And I was lucky enough to get to buy it in 2013.
And what were you saying earlier about when you bought an automatic, you weren't too thrilled at first, right? But then you took it for a drive?
Well, I'm an old school dinosaur. I've been driving 57 years, and I've said about 6 million times, when I get too old to shift a 13 or 18 speed, I'm going to sit on the porch and play with the dogs. Well, I've had to eat crow feathers with mayonnaise and mustard, both on them, to get them down, because I bought this truck, had every intention of taking the automatic out and putting an 18 in it. And after driving that automatic for 2 days, I said, there ain't no way in this world I'll take that out. It's super impressive.
Why did you end up with a Marmon?
I've had heartache for a Marmon since I was about 21 years old. I cut my teeth in a 427 Chevrolet 69, and I used to run up in the Lancaster area and pick up lime for years. And I used to see these guys rolling around these Marmons. I'm like, oh my God, I hope I live long enough to get to that status where I can at least own a Marmon. I'd pay somebody to just let me ride in one for years. And then it came to be that a friend of mine who lives up in Newcastle, Delaware, told me about this gentleman that had passed away. He had 12 Marmons, and the wife couldn't bear to sell them, so they'd been sitting in the edge of a woods, green, leaves all over them, pine shafts, and they were terrible looking. I went up there one Saturday to look at them, and I had like 6 mini strokes that day. I'm like, oh God, I spent 2 nights with the devil in one of them. As it turned out, about 3 months later, the lady called me. She says, I've decided I'm gonna sell a Marmon or 2, and I think you'd give her a good home. She said, I seen something in your face the other day when you were here. I said, yeah, that's called lust. I said, so yes ma'am, I'm ready to buy it. So I bought it. We drove it home with cracks in the tires so bad I didn't know if they were going to blow on the way home. No tag, no insurance. I drove home just like a fool. We started working on the truck, and then about 9 months later, the show in York, Pennsylvania, the national show, I drove her to the show. Well, on the way there, she'd been sitting for 7 years, and the transmission, the rear main seal and the motor started leaking. But we made it there, and we got back.
And you learned about it while you were at the show, right? I
learned about it from a gentleman that walked up to me and knew all about this truck and knew the history on it, and it was the first one, according to the VIN plate on her, that left the factory. She was the prototype truck, and then they ended up making only 4 more.
Well, yeah, they only had a couple years left after that, right?
A couple of years. Everybody, one of the first questions they asked when they come up to a Marmon truck, they want to know, when did they quit making trucks, or do they still make trucks? Now, a lot of people will call this a P57, and that's not exactly what she is. The P57 has this style hood and all, but it's this is a 125 HFR, and that's because it's a sleeper and a high-rise sleeper. It has 2 beds in it, and so a lot of people get that mixed up. But this gentleman that walked up to me at that show taught me a lot about this truck. I had just bought it a couple months later, paid $20,000 for it, put new tires on it and a couple other things, and he offered me $45,000 for it, and I turned him down. My wife told me how retarded I was. I said, well, maybe I am. So he came back later that day and offered me $55,000 for it, and I'm like, he definitely knows this truck is not one to get rid of. So right. Saturday morning, he offered me $65,000 for it. I said, you come back 2 more times, you're going to own a Marmon. My wife is still fussing. She said, you're not going to sell it? I said, if he thinks it's worth $65,000 now, what do you think it's going to be worth in 10 years, and he ain't made
right.
them? I said, no, I'm not getting rid of it.
Well, the older it gets, the rarer it gets.
It sure is. I've turned down 2 or 3 more really good offers. I'm not ready to sell it. I enjoy driving it. I've drove over 5.5 million miles, never had an accident. Only had 1 speeding ticket, and that was in my truck. I'm very proud of that. Not a lot of people can say that. God rode a many a mile with me. But I'm not ready to sell it. Not ready to sell it at all. I said, I've had some people ask, but I want to keep it until I'm too old to get up in it and drive it, and then I'll sell it to somebody to a good home only.
That is perfect.